Well, hello, this is Pat Lynch, and you are listening and watching the Career Pathways Podcast, brought to you live from KILT Studio, deep in the basement of the Maybe Simpson Library at Lyon College. Joining me behind the board, making the magic happen yet again, is
producer Jason.
All right, and joining us today as a special guest is one of our new faculty members, Brandon Porter. How are you, sir?
I'm well. How about yourself?
All right, and I got to get it out one last time that we'll got to say let's go, Brandon, and now it's out of my system, completely purged.
Yeah, that's been a common theme lately.
Yeah, and I know internally you're saying. Externally, you're saying thanks. Internally, I don't want to. That's probably
I don't think it's fit
X-rated.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Yeah. So, how's it? How's your transition been to joining us as faculty?
It has been good. It has been a transition. It's amazing. Because I'm fresh out of grad school, but I do have some teaching experience.
Mm-hmm.
But as a grad student, they let you teach like one course.
Right.
So it's definitely been. It's been a learning curve, figuring out, what's possible versus what you want to do,
right?
Which has been fun. But the student body's great.
Yeah,
getting to teach my social psych course, which is my discipline, but that's always a fun course to teach.
So what classes do you have this semester?
So I am teaching statistics.
Okay.
For the behavioral sciences. Then I teach social psych, and then 2 sections of intro.
Intro to psych. Okay. So so did you have for intro? For all the classes, did you have to build up your curriculum over the summer, or did you inherit like a course plan?
So for the social class, that's a class I have taught before.
Oh, okay.
So I had everything ready to roll,
Mm-hmm.
and then that was a nice smooth transition. Stats was the newest one. So
that
was the one where they've been sort of like building from the ground up, and even that, we're taking some adjustments because students come in with differing abilities, different levels of confidence when it comes to math, or statistics itself is almost more of a logic based. But still, you have to learn the basics of the software involved in order to do that stuff practically. So that's sort of where the challenge is now, is figuring out what is the most viable path for that class. And then, of course, intro is a class I taught it a long time ago.
Right.
That was my first class when I was, just starting to teach as a grad student. So that I'm treating that more or less as a new prep.
Because
it's, of course, Britt taught, is teaching it now. Rob has taught. So they've all been very helpful. So
okay, as far as giving you that. One thing, that's been a common theme with several of the faculty we've talked to is everything around math and science, anxiety, that, our students, they come in and, the stats class, that's for like psych majors, but...
psych majors, but I think there are also a bunch of exercise science.
And so... all of a sudden, they have that, statistics, and they're in a cold sweat. I mean, how do you address that? How do you get them through that?
A lot of it is just easing into it and notice, this isn't just like abstract math on a chalkboard. Mm-hmm. It's problem focused. You've got, whether it be an experimental design, or you've got like a particular set of answers where you're trying to see, what correlates. Did your experiment pan out? Right. So framing it very much, within that broader research design, I think helps make it a little less scary. Makes it a little less math and a little bit more part of the process.
And I can identify. I know in business school, I was a marketing major, but we needed they called it quantitative methods and business analytics, which was statistics, and all of us as marketing majors just kind of took a blood oath, and we took it in the summer, when we could do nothing but that. And so then it was just, okay, I'm going to live and breathe it for 8 weeks, and then I'll get through it. And that was all based on that anxiety. Now I got into the business world, and all of a sudden actually application was all around me, and it wasn't too terrifying.
Yeah, it was the same with my experience. My undergrad experience, I took college algebra, and that was like my least favorite class ever. Then I took a stats class through the math department, and all I remember was the instructor like would point with his middle finger, and he would basically flip us off the whole time. I don't remember any concepts, but then I took, by then I finally decided like, oh, I like psych. I'll be a psych major. So then I took psych through the stats department, and it was a totally different animal.
Okay, now you're a psychologist, and your professor's pointing every day with his middle finger. How do you interpret that?
I don't know. It just like there would be people laughing, and it was just. But needless to say, like I don't recall a whole lot from it. Like and looking back now that I've got that basic framework, I'm sure like that class would be much more approachable. But back then it wasn't. At least for me.
Kind of going back to the beginning. Where are you from originally?
So I am from Central Ohio originally.
Okay, name it.
Yep, just north of Columbus. Small town called Johnstown.
Okay, I spent 2 years in Columbus, but Johnstown.
Yeah, it's like be 10 minutes like northeast of New Albany.
Oh, okay.
That's sort of an up and coming place.
Which New Albany now is like, God, what?
Yeah, it used to be nothing but cornfields, and now it's...
the Limited went out there or something.
Yeah, Bob Evans moved their location.
And
a ton of data servers for Facebook.
Yeah.
Actually, ironically, that was my parents' old house. They were bought out, and now it's like data servers.
Yeah.
So they
Oh yeah.
It's very different.
So then you went to I guess high school in Ohio.
Yep. Johnstown Monroe was the district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And undergrad was where?
So undergrad, so when I was in high school, I started taking post-secondary credits. So I would hop in my car and I would drive to Columbus State Community College.
Yeah.
That's where I took my first psych class. That's where I started to realize I could do math maybe, didn't really like it, but it was okay. And then once I graduated, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but mom and dad were insistent, like going to college.
Right.
So I went to Ohio State University, Newark campus.
Okay.
Because it was, I did not want to deal with the Columbus traffic.
Yeah.
The giant courses. So like the Newark campus was this really awesome place. They had a fully developed psych, they had several psych faculty folk all doing research. They had a lab in the basement of one of the buildings. And it was there that early on, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I think I was pre-med or pre-law or, whatever it is. Most people come in, and then I thought like, man, I like political science. I took an anthropology course. And eventually I kind of stumbled on psych just as being, the study of thought and behavior. And like, well, this is pretty neat. I could see myself doing that. And then I was asked by who would go on to become my thesis advisor, Dr. Hupp, asked if I wanted to work in a lab. I said, sure. And that's sort of how it got to start.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not what I do now.
Right.
I was working it was a language development labs. They would do studies on children, studies on adults, and sort of try to determine the way in which we as human beings develop and use language. But that's where I got my start.
And then graduate school, where did you end up?
So from there, at the time, I thought I wanted to do industrial organization psychology.
All right.
Because, I thought like that's where the money was.
Yes.
That's the practical thing to do. Right. So like I applied to mostly IO programs. And then I did apply to one general psych master's program at University of Dayton. Ultimately, that's where I ended up going, where I worked under a social psychologist, R. Matthew Montoya. And there's where I finally sort of started to hone in my focus on like, I'm interested in how people function in groups, how groups interact, and then sort of gradually
Still sounds like you were in the industrial psych,
kind of in a way. That's the cool thing is, like I was able to stick with that how people behave in groups, but I was able to take a much broader theoretical approach.
Sure.
Instead of, like exclusively focused on business.
And then for your PhD?
Yeah. Then I went to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville.
All right.
I was there for 6 years. Worked under Lowell Gertner. I had a blast.
Yeah.
Like we were interested in why people do extreme things. Like if you ask people if they'd be willing to say, have you ever heard of the trolley dilemma?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's like there's 5 people tied to a bridge, pull a lever, and the trolley switches tracks and it kills 1 person instead of 5. Do you flip the switch? Several social psychologists had been doing self-sacrificial variants of that, where instead of you flipping the switch and it kills someone else, imagine flipping the switch and it kills you.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to do that for, say, 5 fellow Americans?
Right.
And a lot of people say they would.
Right.
Right. And Lowell and I were really interested in but would they really?
Yeah.
In particular, there's a construct called identity fusion.
Right.
So when we think about ourselves, we can think about ourselves different ways, right? We can think about ourselves as unique people, right? Like unique person with these values, these traits, these beliefs. We can think of ourselves as big group members, right? Like I'm an Arkansan now, right? Or, member of Lyon College, so on, these kind of broad categories. The idea is we can become so connected to that bigger collective that they can almost fuse. And when they're in that state, theoretically, people are willing to do really extreme things for the group.
That group think and everything.
Yeah, in a way. They're also willing to sacrifice the group for them, which is kind of this curious, distinct pattern.
Tell me more about that.
So this would have been Lowell and a former student, but they found this really cool effect where traditionally you give people a scale with these 7 items. It's like the fight and die for the United States scale. Like I would be willing to, to fight if someone threatened my country or if someone threatened another member of my country. Flip it on its head, you'd be willing to let your group fight for you if somebody threatened you. And you find folks who are fused are also willing to do that. So there's a reciprocal action here, which is pretty neat. But we were really interested in how much of this is the manifestation of self-report. Like it's all, what would you do in this situation? It's all like presented on a piece of paper as a 7-point scale.
Sure.
So we created scenarios in the lab, which as far as the participant thought were actual opportunities to do something potentially painful. We created a bogus plasma drive.
Yeah.
We told them that the United States Blood Bank, an organization as far as we know didn't exist, is donating or is doing a donation for, a drive for donating plasma. They really need it. The United States is facing a shortage.
Yeah.
If you want, you could fill out your survey for this study while donating plasma. It's kind of painful. Would you like to do that? And then just see if they say yes or no.
Right.
And then, of course, we have a control condition where they just receive it in survey form. Imagine you're approached. And we did this across a variation of studies. We did one where it was they were asked to donate a small amount of skin to help the United States Institute for Cancer Research.
Right.
We did a variation where the Department of Defense was doing a hybrid military program. And we started to see this cool pattern emerge where people who are fused do seem to be more willing to do potentially painful things, but only in a military context. So if you ask them to donate plasma, fusion does not predict.
Right.
When you ask them to donate a small skin sample, fusion does not predict.
Right.
Ask them to join the military, suddenly we see fusion emerging as a predictor, regardless of whether it's real or imagined.
Is it that sense of like a country or something greater than me that gets them
seems to be
past that?
That's sort of what we're exploring right now. Is it seems to be something about the nature of the threat, right? Like one threatens group members, the other threatens the group's existence, the group as a whole, or the group's ideological component. So we designed a study where we went back to surveys and we just asked them, imagine something's about to happen that is going to harm and kill a lot of people, but not in the United States. Something's going to end the United States, but not harm a lot of people. And then we did a full factorial cross of group threat versus member threat. And sure enough, we find fusion kicks in as a predictor only when the group's existence, only when that ideological component is sort of being threatened.
Well, it's inevitable. We got to jump to politics because because that's always that they're out to, they're out to destroy us, and create that sense of threat, and the sense of threat then brings cohesion, and then that cohesion gets people to go along with whatever the platform is that you want to advance. Yeah,
and that's precisely sort of, it fits well with what we're seeing culturally, as well as it seems to fit the pattern of data that we're finding in the lab, as well as like decades of work in intergroup relations. Like, like if you want to promote outgroup hostility, create an existential threat, claim that the other group is a source of that potential threat, and as well as, classic, dehumanize them, a whole host of really ugly things.
Yeah, kind of like my way of looking at the Ohio State Buckeyes. So that's
yeah, and that's as a Tennessee,
for me.
as a Tennessee Vol for very briefly, not briefly, I was there for 6 years.
Right.
It was volunteer or nothing. And then, back before that, it was Buckeyes or nothing, and now it's I guess I'm a Scot now.
Yep, you're fighting Scot.
Yeah, I've got to merge.
When you're talking about like groupthink, that the interesting thing is people say one thing, but what do they really do? And is that one of the bigger challenges in a lot of social psychology? Is how to really get past kind of because we're in a survey, we're all going to be our ideal self.
Yeah,
and we know that's not human nature. So what other kind of ways can you really find out how people will act?
Yeah, so that was actually one of the, certainly not a novel finding, but it was one of the coolest things about the study designs that we'd ran, was when you ask people if they'd be willing to donate plasma in a survey, you get I think it was close to about 40% would say, yeah, of course I would do that. When you jump them in the real situation, it drops down to I think right around 18%.
Yeah.
So a substantial drop in the willingness. Same with the military. Like there we see 20% are willing to claim they would do it, but then it drops down to about 5%. When it's the real deal. So that's always a concern. One way that you can try to control for that is just, always stick to your basic experimental design, make sure you've got a comparable control group, because if you're looking at moderating factors, if I think a certain ideological component is going to lead to a higher willingness, I should still see that across my conditions.
Right.
I'm just overall going to see a spike in willingness.
Yeah.
So if I'm interested in base rates, I should be really concerned. But if I'm just looking for differences in different moderating variables, you can still see that through the exaggerations.
Okay. With as far as for group motivation and trying to, as a group leader, trying to kind of move them towards a shared sense of purpose and for a particular point of action, what other things could or can a leader do besides just pose that, there's an existential threat to us? Because I don't know, that playbook won't work all the time.
Yeah.
So you need other things to kind of motivate.
Yeah. So social psych has studied that for a while too.
Yeah.
One area that sometimes works pretty well is, de-individuate. If you want, particularly if the goal is to promote, harmonious relationships between different groups.
Right.
Treat the other person as a person as opposed to a generic category member. If you're trying to get a particular group to work well alongside another group, another strategy that works sometimes is what we call a superordinate goal.
Right.
And, Sharif, way back in the 60s, studied this with his, with the infamous Robbers Cave or Cove study, where basically you put kids into groups and make them compete, and sure enough, the groups come to hate each other.
Yeah.
Give them a big goal that they have to work together to sort of solve, and they start to get along again. And, so that is one option is to, create a common goal that folks can work to.
Yeah.
And then, of course, works since Alport has even it predates him, I think, contact, put people in contact with one another as people, and make it good contact.
Yeah.
Give them something to do, give them something to work together with, and you can create more harmonious intergroup relations.
Yeah.
So a lot of it has to do with, the specific goal that a leader wants. If it's to try to create harmony between groups, which would be a really good thing, there are certain approaches that could be taken that there's a lot of data to back up.
Yeah, because I put in decades in corporate America, so I've had my trust falls and my scavenger hunts and my what one interesting thing about me, and all, I could, the list can go on, and as far as to try and bring people together. I mean, kind of what does, in your opinion, what really does work, or that's genuine and can hold?
I'd say the biggest one is stop treating people as category members and recognize them as unique individuals and create that connection at the individual level.
Mm-hmm.
That said, there's a whole host of different theories that are going to argue different things, but I'd say that there's a fair bit of data to suggest that. And of course, my own work is more interested in that extreme behavior. So
when it comes to groupthink, how does it or has it changed by generations? I mean, being that I'll be in the representative boomer in this room, so do boomers operate differently than Gen Z, or is it really studied, or is it just doesn't matter?
I mean, in terms of like the tendency to form and maintain group memberships and act in a group serving way, I suspect, I'm not sure if I've seen any work that looks at it generationally. For the most part, like we have a fundamental need to belong.
Yes.
And that's a really strong motivator to like help us form groups.
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of that classic intergroup relations work, like you can still see some variations of like the old Kandinsky paradigm where you just tell people you prefer this painting, you prefer that painting, you're a group now. And then sure enough, you see them acting in group ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like that stuff works, for the most part. We're still human beings. Now, one area where you'll see the shifts are, that surface level stuff, like the types of groups folks join.
Right.
And I was reading, it was like an op-ed, I can't remember where, but it was discussing just this, is, the types of groups we find ourselves more likely to join now are different. Like a lot more people seek that social component, on the internet than they would have, decades ago, or they seek it at a much broader, bigger scale, as opposed to like, you don't often hear about kids like, I don't know, like going to a Rotary Club breakfast or something, and that certainly can have an impact.
Oh yeah,
because those big broad categories, it's certainly you're not going to get the same level, the same depth of connection that you might at a much smaller localized group, and also the context is going to change.
Right. Because that's the one reality, is so many people are retreating to their digital space, and so there's a lot more isolation, that you see, and even it promoted with virtual work, so work becomes a whole lot more distributed, and then you're trying to build a group and build cohesion, and it's all just tiles on a Zoom call. It probably represents a whole new challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly the way the sort of like dominant modes with which we go about forming our groups, well, that stuff hasn't necessarily changed. It's all that context level. It's like when we go to join something, even like just if we go to sign up for a basic service, like if I'm going to sign up for internet, I'm not going to go, drive to the Optimum building to sign up for internet. I'm going to do it online.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, certainly like the amount of in-person interactions we're probably seeing a decrease, which, whether or not we can make up meaningful contributions on an online, I know there's some data to suggest like online connections can be real and they can be meaningful. It's a little outside my area though. But.
Oh yeah. Well, that'll be the relationship we have with our AI chatbot someday. You got a name for your AI chatbot yet?
No,
Jason?
but I do have a friend that I've never met that I consider my best friend, though.
Yeah, exactly. So like those kinds of connections
I've known him
can
for
be meaningful.
9 years.
What?
I mean, to be fair, I'm sure there's something psychological with that where I met him when I was like 13, which is like the prime of like, making new experiences in life. But like, yeah, 9 years. I mean, we've met once. He lives in Florida. So,
yeah.
Yeah. I live Minnesota, Florida. We never met for like 7 or 8 years, but we were best friends.
But you verified that this is this is like a real person. Not,
yeah, he's a year older than me.
But it's not Vladimir, like living
no,
in a basement
it's not.
somewhere in Russia or anything
it's
like
not.
that.
And his girlfriend. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but his girlfriend like.
Oh, please do.
His girlfriend like lived in Illinois.
Okay.
And so like she had a lot of the Midwest commonalities that I did. So like he was like, yeah, she used to work at this place called Menards. And I was like,
oh yeah.
I was like, yeah, I know Menards. He's like, what? He's like, dude, this place is like so niche. I was like, no, dude, it's everywhere up here. Like that is our
Home Depot.
Yeah, that's our Home Depot. So, but yeah, like fun stuff like that. But yeah, we met online, like video games, and then it's just moved from that. Like we've servers, games, text. Like I still talk to him. Like he just sent me something like an hour ago.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Dramatic change of subject. I'm going to have to come back to that sometime, Jay. Yeah, maybe when we start our podcast.
Okay. We can do that.
Can we dial in it? Would your friend join us sometime?
I don't know. He's not that type of guy, but maybe.
Right.
If I asked him to, if I said like, hey, we talked about you on this podcast that I do, he'd probably be like, oh, okay. But I mean, maybe he might join. Like,
awesome. Yeah.
Talk about relationships. But.
Yeah. Back to dramatic change of subject. What do you have any research that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so we've got a couple things, things that I want to get started as soon as I can, and then of course things that are currently underway.
Okay.
So one is the data that my collaborator / research mentor, Lowell Gertner, he's collecting at University of Tennessee, and there we've designed this really cool study where we're presenting participants with what they think is a real situation, but we're varying whether or not it threatens the group or whether or not it threatens group members.
Right.
To see whether or not we can sort of tease apart that group threat versus member threat and what participants believe is an ostensibly real situation. Right. And then I've got some, we've got some work that one thing is I'd like to get started on a meta-analysis of the fusion and self-sacrifice data. Coming from existing other work. So one really cool thing is when you look at the way these things are measured, you've got the fusion scale and you've got the fighting and dying scale. 2 7-item little scales, again, assessing hypothetical behavior.
Right.
But when you look at the items of that fighting and dying scale, 2 of the items are actually more relevant to individual group membership well-being. So it's like I would be willing to fight if someone threatened the life of another group member.
You're right.
And when you split those 2 items apart from the rest and basically create 2 subscales of willingness to fight for the group, willingness to fight for members, fusion differentially predicts. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to basically reach out to anybody who's used these scales, get the data, and try to do a meta-analysis of it.
Nice.
Which that's sort of like, I view that as kind of low-hanging fruit that I'd like to do. And then, of course, we've got some data from like previous studies that I'd like to try to replicate. We had to move online just because, these sorts of data collection, they take sometimes 300, 400 participants. So it's not always feasible to do in person. But online, I think we've got a couple studies where we'd like to do a variation of that trolley dilemma we talked about earlier. Threatening fellow group members, in this case Americans, but varying whether or not those Americans are being individuated, right? Okay. Are they being named? Yeah. Is it Bill, Tom, George, or is it just Americans? The idea that maybe there's something about when you hear the word fellow Americans activates almost, this group consideration versus hearing people being individuated really highlights their individuality. So maybe fusion will differentially predict there.
Interesting.
Yeah. But, we've got a couple things sort of in the works.
Yeah.
As well as some sort of ideas that go further out.
Nice. Yeah. And what about you're just kind of getting everything situated here at Lyon, but do you have any courses that you'd like to introduce or create?
Yes. So one thing I have been working on is like what I would want to teach is like the ideal special topics for me.
Yeah.
And I think like what I really would like is a course on radicalism and extremism. Like how do people go about finding themselves in those, extreme groups?
Yeah, when they get
what are some of those
radicalized by watching YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, and like there've been a lot because a lot of work has been fixated on this really since 9/11, but it's sort of it's in a resurgence now because we're seeing it to such extreme degrees. But there are really great books, edited books coming out on extremism, exclusion, radicalization, and I think those would make really great sort of starting points for really a really awesome seminar course.
Yeah, because I read like that it's like the young male, isolated, lonely, that that all of a sudden now is one of those prime targets for some level of radicalization.
Yeah, and there are different processes that so you've got some folks coming out of the ostracism literature who are saying like it's that exclusion. It's these were groups that for years were like the top of the social hierarchy and they still are.
Yeah.
But the relative perception, it's like they're losing ground and that creates that sense of exclusion.
Sure.
Then you've got the more group dynamic, like they're perceiving their identity as under threat, and that creates that sort of highlights that identity is under threat, and we need to do extreme action. But it's currently being explored by a bunch of different avenues, which I think would be really awesome to be able to explore that from the different sets of literature to sort of dive into the social psych of it.
Any other courses in mind?
I mean, the classic is research method. I think that's what I'm likely going to be teaching in the spring, and that is if you can understand research method, you can understand most things. Like it's the most important course that they'll take in psych, particularly if they want to go on to in academia. It serves as sort of the bare bones. But even if they don't want to go into academia, being able to read scientific information and read it critically is critically important right now.
There you go. This is a podcast about careers, and so now you have you're not advising yet, but you're going to in next academic year you'll have psychology majors.
Yeah,
and they're going to part of it's what course I need to take. Part of it is going to be kind of what kind of careers can I make out of being a psychology major. What advice would you have?
So, one thing to keep in mind is like psych is a popular major. If you look across a lot of universities,
fourth most popular. Yeah.
You look at other universities, that's like it's the biggest. And like there's a lot you can do with psych. Having an understanding of human behavior and thought and being able to apply that scientific mindset to it can be invaluable across a lot of careers. There's a lot of useful stuff in psych available to folks who go on to pursue HR. Marketing has a lot of psychological principles. Economics, a lot of folks who get their PhD in psych, they end up in economics departments. Making a lot more money than we do in the psych departments. And of course, there's always the classic, like scientific avenue, which is that's the area that I'm partial to, being in it. But even outside of it, like there are now applied programs for industrial organizational where folks can, go on and get their masters in it and make really awesome careers of, working as consultants, helping businesses. Of course, there's the counseling avenue for folks who are more interested in helping, individuals as opposed to businesses. But like now you've got like masters in social work. A lot of psych majors end up, pursuing social work as their career of choice, and they go on to get masters in that, or they just go straight into the field depending on licensure stuff.
Sure.
But like it's a really nice major in that you've got a lot of potential.
Right.
But sometimes it does take. It's a bit of a longer path if you want that really specialized thing.
Yeah, and but it's not that it's only leads to these two types of careers. And then in careers, everybody thinks of them as just a linear line, that from start to always going up to the right, and it's actually just like, well, it's kind of like Bethany and I when we got into that raft for the, and it kind of goes jig-jag and backwards and circles, and and it's and so that's one that that's just more what the career path is, and psychology just kind of gives you that foundation.
Yep. Yeah, and even within the major, like within the psych major, you can take courses that are going to be more relevant clinical. You can take courses that are relevant more for the counseling / social work avenue, the developmental avenue. There's the social side.
Yeah.
There's just a lot. And it's a cool field in that.
Nice. Well, and just advance notice. I'll be hitting you up next semester because I in the spring semester I always teach consumer behavior, and so
I remember you telling me about that.
I always like to bring in our social psychologists to kind of talk with the class. It's and they really like it.
And persuasion. The art of persuasion is Cialdini's book. It's a big area in psych, and it's a cool area, and it has an immediate application, which is it's always nice to when you can see that application, it makes it meaningful in the eyes of the students. And that always helps.
Well, perfect. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up. It's you with us, Jason, or you're not texting your friend? I hope.
No, not yet. I will. Trust me, it will happen. But if he would be willing to get on a show, we could definitely get him on a show.
Oh, I wouldn't. Don't put any pressure, right? But it could be cool. But well, this is going to wrap us up. But before I start wrapping it up, I always turn it over to you. Okay, what question, Jason? If you have ESPN and you can read my mind. That's a dad joke, and you don't. It fell flat, and it should. But what question am I about to ask you?
Where can you find the Career Pathways podcast?
Oh my goodness! And the answer is
you should say it since I said since we reverse the roles. Reverse the roles here.
Okay, touche. All right, there you have a little throw.
Where can you find the Career Pathways podcast?
Well, you can find it on every conceivable streaming platform. We've done the work, we've done the research, and what we have found is that you can find it at 99.7% of all possible things out there on the internet. So basically, you will find the Career Pathways podcast, and you can listen to it in your automobile. You can watch us on YouTube. Well, we're everywhere. Did I do it justice, Jason?
Yeah, you forgot the germ part, but yeah. Well,
that's why I shouldn't be handling this. This is why you need to continue doing it, because you see what happens when you give it to an amateur. I fail miserably.
Yep.
But Brandon, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Fun. Yeah, but we've rolled through most of our new faculty, and we have Brown Janes coming up, and we threw a "Let's Go Brandon." We're going to have to do the hardest working man in show business. Soul Brother number one. Brown James. Just got to do what you got to do. But welcome to Lyon.
Yeah, thanks.
We're very happy to have you, and
excited to be here.
Thanks, and thank you to our listeners and watchers of the Career Pathways podcast. Come join us. We podcast every other week, and what we have are interviews just like this. A great way to meet and learn more about our exciting new faculty that we have on campus. So again, we greatly appreciate that you're listening and watching. We hope you like us, put a recommendation out there, and we'll catch up with you next time. Take care. Bye.
This broadcast is sponsored in part by Lyon College and by KILT Studios.